Yeah, that's the point, Simone Biles. You're representing your nation, you're selfish sociopath. I just said she's probably the greatest gymnast of all time. She's also very selfish, she's immature, and she is a shame to the country. LeBron James is a self-interested, narcissistic, and we know he's not very smart. LeBron James chronically cheats on his wife, obviously. He's an NBA player. Because of DEI, it begs the question when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence? Creates thought patterns that are not necessarily wholesome. Black America was getting richer, they were getting stronger, and families were largely still put together before the Great Society, Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act. 60 years later, Black America is in a worse position. I'm not saying it's because of the Civil Rights Act, I'm not saying it's because of the Voting Rights Act, but somewhere something went awry. I can name at least a dozen people more deserving in the 20th century of a federal holiday than MLK. The reason we talk about race so much is because we have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding.
Okay, so someone sent me this. A clip of Charlie Kirk as in some way to imply that, look at him. He was a bad man. Look at the bad things he said. As to imply that somehow, somewhere, that it was sort of deserving what happened to him. This is how sick, this is how dangerous, this is how twisted these people are. To take a clip, 1 minute and 25 seconds, roughly 1.5 minutes of this man's life, or something that he has said, and try to justify him being cold-bloodedly gunned down. Now this is the sort of mentality these people have. But you see, this is not surprising. If you look throughout history, American history, political history, you would realize that there's a pattern of unwanted, disturbing political violence against free speech and against Republicans. This is not surprising at all. Let's go as far back as JFK, the murder of JFK. Okay? Again, it was done by a racist, a socialist Marxist, Democrat, Lee Harvey Oswald, who shot JFK because he thought he was an advocate of civil rights and because he thought that he was coddling and intermingling with black folks too much. Again, this is a white Southern Democrat who actually took this man out because he did not agree with his political persuasion. And oh boy, this is the party that you guys love and admire and believe in so much today. Yeah, this is the history. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research and see who created the so-called KKK that the Democrats like to talk about. Do your own research. You guys like to go on the internet. You guys are trigger happy on the internet. Do your research and see who created the KKK. And you would realize that it was the armed militant wing of the white Southern Democrat Party. There's it. I bet you didn't know that, huh? But now today you're being bamboozled and you hear these Democrats calling Republicans, oh, these are KKK. Oh, these are white supremacists. Only you guys who don't engage in critical thinking, don't engage in logic, are a bunch of emotional sensationalists. Okay? Emotional sensationalists. That they can fool with that. But you know, it's not considered brilliant to fool foolish people. So it's no mystery when a bunch of upstart charlatans come along, deceive you, bamboozle you, make you giddy-headed, and gain the reins of power, and it's twisting you around and dragging you through the mud. That is not a surprise. It has to do with your mentality. You don't engage in logic and thinking and reasonable thinking and critical thinking. You are emotional sensationalists. If you just stop for 1 second and just think, and I don't call it to use common sense because it's not common sense, because it's not common. Just use a little bit of uncommon sense, and then you will see through everything. Just for 1 second. A little bit of uncommon sense. Use it. And then you will see everything. Everything will become clear and as crystal clear as daylight. Now LBJ, another staunch Democrat, came along, and in order to calm down the country, to quell the violence that was taking place in cities, decided to pass the Civil Rights Act and took credit for everything, for all the arduous work that Republicans did towards civil rights, and passed the Civil Rights Act, and said that he believed black folks would be voting for the Democrat Party for 200 years after that. And in truth and in fact, he was correct, because he was seen as the one that actually got it passed. Okay? When so many times before that, it was Democrats who actually defeated any attempt to pass civil rights. Okay? So get your history straight, bro. Now, who killed MLK? It was another white Southern Democrat who was against his civil rights activities. Okay? Now let's go back a little further. Now, who killed Abraham Lincoln when he freed the slaves? John Wilkes Booth, another Democrat who didn't appreciate what he did by freeing the slaves. And I know, imagine with all that I have said here today to appeal to your reason and to your logic, and it makes sense, and it's historical fact. Despite that historical fact, that still won't convince you, okay, to get off that Democrat plantation. Still, they will continue to use the race issue, okay, to hook you, just as they did in the 60s. You're hooked with that race issue. And all they have to say is, oh, Republicans are racist. And then you swallow this up. You swallow this up. You swallow up the propaganda. And I've just shown you historical fact. When we know, okay, that is the Republican Party that freed the slaves. When we know extensively that it was the Democrat Party that fought tooth and nail to sabotage the civil rights movement, to sabotage any civil rights bill, until it was politically strategically wise for them to actually pass the Civil Rights Act, okay, so that they could garner more power and they could hook, okay, they could hook the black population politically. Even if I told you and you know that the very KKK they're talking about was created by the Democrat Party, still that would not convince you. Because you people, you don't think logically. You don't think reasonably. You think with emotion. Okay? When you also know that it was white Southern Democrats that were the ultimate racists, still you will gravitate and you'll hold on to a Democrat Party that plays games with you, that tries to rewrite history. Okay? That is how you people have been bamboozled. That is how you people have been bamboozled. And that is why they hated to the core Charlie Kirk, because he brought clarity, honesty, and he exposed the propaganda and the lies and the deception globally that these liberal Democrats perpetuate every single day. That is why this man was so dangerous. That is why you would see them celebrating his demise, because they know that he was a force to be reckoned with. And even Malcolm X, your own, tried to warn you about the liberal. Democrat. He warned you. He said he's like a fox. He's cunning. He's deceptive. How much more of an allegory that you need to describe the liberal? But yet still, you people are bamboozled by a devious media. They control your minds and your thought. Okay? You have stopped reasoning for yourself because it's easy to sit back and just listen to people talk. Okay? It takes effort. It takes energy to research, to take the time to think logically. That's too much. So you don't do that. You take the easy route. And that is why they have a hold and a control over your minds. This is not just domestically. And you have people who have been decades in the United States, does not even understand. They're too hoodwinked. The truth of the matter is that you don't like truth. You like quick fixes. You like Obama-esque characters. You love ice cream pans and sweet speeches. That is what gets you going. You get hypnotized. You get into a trance by ice cream pans and sweet speeches. That is your downfall. The Democrats are masters of manipulation. Masters of manipulation. Masters of deception. And they know what you love. They know how to hypnotize you. They know how to play games with you. They can put you in the palm of their hands and they can make you out of clay. And here we are today in modern times. We've seen so much political violence. And even if you were trying to use this clip to actually discredit this man, you actually failed. Because what this man said about the harmful effects and the observation that there have been markedly reduced marriage rates among the black family since the middle of the 20th century is actual fact. There is actually a correlation between the passing of the Greater Society Act, okay, and the decline in marriage rates among the black family. Prior to that, it was about 70%. Today, it's hovering around 30%, to the total opposite extreme. And the decadent, dire consequences of single female black families is destroying our community. That's a fact. And that is what he was saying. So if you were trying to make him look bad, you didn't succeed. And there's no context to the video. There's no context why you were saying that Simone Biles was actually selfish. And we have seen all the shenanigans. We've seen all the shenanigans that LeBron James has engaged in. And after 2020, as soon as the Democrats won the election, he totally stopped his activism. Now, where is him now? Huh? So it just goes to show that prior to 2020 and the run-up to the 2020 election, he was actually doing political hit jobs for the Democrat Party. He was trying to please his overlords. Okay? Malcolm X warned us about blacks among us who do that all the time. Malcolm X said in the 60s, they did it to be invited for coffee down in Washington, D.C. Today, they're still doing it to smooch with white liberals. They're afraid that their contracts will be canceled if they said anything that made sense or that was grounded in logic and reason. So before you start talking about American politics, go read American Government 101 and Political History of the United States. And then you will truly see who are the traitors to democracy. And stop taking a minute and a half out of that man's 16,293,600 minutes of life and trying to characterize that man's life by that minute and a half. Yes, I calculated it. you guys would better serve yourself paying attention to your coconut politics with your upstart charlatan politicians who are actually running your country into the ground by adopting mainstream American Democrat political thinking and implementing it in their society. That, my friend, it's coming to a doorstep next to you. There is something you should be worried about or concerned about instead of worrying about American politics. There is something you should be truly worried about.